everybody. Welcome to the show. I hope everybody can hear me okay. Chat here. See, people have already hopped on. Do feel free to ping me and let me know if you're having any troubles hearing me this evening. I do have a lot of things I'd like to go over this tonight. Hopefully, it won't take too long, but I mean, I'm pretty excited. Actually, I've got to a point now in my life, I guess, and my magical work, where I can actually start talking about some of the more obscure things that I've wanted to talk about for the last couple of years, because I've been moving forward and moving onward throughout the mundane life, right? You know, so like I don't know how many people are familiar with my personal history, but a couple of years ago, let's see. I had the opportunity to start over again with my life, and things have actually been progressing rather well, especially lately. In fact, before I go too much further, let me talk about that a little bit. All right, so in occult money news, I would like to talk a little bit about my recent updates. As you may or may not know, I have purchased a laser engraving device, which is pretty cool in my opinion. I am enjoying it very much, and as a result, I have been creating cool things, and I am now selling them on my site. So let me give you a quick update on that. This will just take a second. Where is my... I need to find the... says Edge browser here. Okay. All right. Seeing it? You're not seeing it. I'm seeing it. Okay, because I got to turn it on. Aha. All right, so this is my Edge browser. Okay, so this is my website. If you go out, the link is going to be in the comments down below. This is the magical equipment part of my site. If you go to the shop and go to magical equipment, you'll see this. These are things I'm making with my laser engraver. I am enjoying it a lot. So this is like the tables of practice on these conjure boxes. They are formed like I burn them into the wood, and then I glue them onto these boxes, and then I wire the boxes with lights. And basically what they're designed to do is create a system for you to be able to conjure up all the 7 planetary spirits, or basically any spirit that you have a talisman for, a metal talisman for, in a quick and easy way, so that you can get to work recreating your life, or creating your life, and getting everything on track. So I've got 3 things out here, out and about. I've got the conjure box itself. It is just the box. It's got the table of practice on the top. It opens up. It's a cigar box. It opens up, and inside it's got this nice red velvet thing where you can place all of your talismans. The box itself, at this price, $175, is just the box. You can see the battery case up here. The battery is replaceable when it stops lighting up. When you put the metal talismans on the lid, then it's time for you to change the battery. But basically, to operate it, you just drop this, you drop the metal talisman here on the electrodes, and when you do, it lights up the light. It completes a circuit. The circuit has to pass through the seal of whatever seal it is that you have on there. This is Gabriel. This is the Laman that you can get with the set that I've made. This is all Trithemian Lamans. But this is all based on the Trithemian table of practice and the Trithemian method of conjure. It's a super simple method of doing it, but this box itself works with any metal talisman. You can get just the box by itself, or you can also, I've got, so now that I've got the laser engraver that marks metals, you can get a set of all these 7 planetary lamans that are based on the Trithemian system. They're all engraved in the planetary hours. They're not like the nicest and the prettiest lamans that are going to be out there on the market. I'm still kind of new at all this stuff. You're getting 7 lamans though that are engraved in the planetary hours with the appropriate seals of the planets for $175, and that's basically it's like $25 a piece. And this set works completely. Each one of these works with the conjure box. So, and if you want to get the complete set, you can get both of them together. This is just the set of the talismans alone is $175. The box is $175, but if you want the whole kit, I actually found these little crystal balls that you can get on Amazon, and I found these little tiny ones and these little bezel things. So if you want the ball itself and the set and the set of talismans and the conjure box and everything you need to get started conjuring these spirits today, it's altogether it's $325. So that's $175 for the box, $125 for the complete set, and then like another $25 for the crystal ball and stuff. So anyway, let me know if you want this stuff. It's all available on my site. Links are down below. Okay, enough sales, enough of the cult money stuff, ongoing stuff around that. And now I can get on to the actual stuff that I would like to do. I don't like to. I mean, I enjoy making sales. Don't get me wrong. I was born to sell things. I have Jupiter in Pisces, I think it is. So I've got really good luck, and I've got Mercury in Gemini. So I like to talk about things. So I enjoy very much the process of sales. But tonight I didn't want to talk about sales so much as I want to do. All right. Let's see if I can make this bigger for later because I don't like how small that is. Okay, so enough of the money stuff and enough of the browser. You do have to have money to get by in this world. It's very terrible. Hey Axel, how's it going? All right, so I guess everybody can hear me. If you can't hear me, do type and let me know, because if I'm just sitting here talking to myself, I have done that before. It's embarrassing. So, all right. Let's see. Enough of the money. Okay. Yes. So the money stuff is over. So tonight I want to talk about the actual Zeus cult, right? The cult that I've been talking about for months now. I've been talking about wanting to do this, and it's a system of accomplishing the great work based on the Bernabe interpretation of the Derveni manuscript, the Derveni papyrus. The Derveni papyrus itself is let me go back to my Edge browser here. All right, so the Derveni manuscript itself is it's the oldest known manuscript that we have in Western civilization, or whatever you want to call it. And the Derveni papyrus, it's like this burned up papyrus. It's a commentary on an Orphic initiation by one of the initiators. Today, if you've ever been initiated into something like the OTO, after initiation, the person who initiates you sits down, you have a knowledge lecture, and they talk about everything that happened during the initiation. And the Derveni manuscript is a record of one of the initiators' commentaries on one of the poems that are presented in this Orphic initiation. Not the same Orphic initiation that you might be familiar with if you're familiar with the Orphic hymns. It's slightly different sect, or in the same way that the Essenes might have been considered a different sect of Gnostics, which they weren't really, but they kind of were. The type of Orphics that are talked about in the Derveni manuscript are not necessarily the same Orphic mysteries that you might be familiar with the Orphic hymns. So just for the purposes of this conversation, I will be referring to the Derveni theogony. So many questions and some answers. The manuscript by Alberto Bernabe. The link is in the text here. I will be talking about the specific pieces in detail here, so you don't have to have it. But I recommend that you definitely read through this. It's a fascinating read, and it's our oldest manuscript, and it's a good look at what initiators have always had to deal with when it comes to these mysteries. Because he's not just talking about the poem and what it means to the person and how they have to use it. He's talking about what they're doing here. Why are we getting initiated? Why are we even seeking the mysteries? what calls us to this thing? What is it about our life that is important here? And within the context of the Zeus cult that I want to start, and just for the record, when I say cult, I'm talking about a mystery cult. I'm not talking about I'm going to control your mind and what you think about things. It's the last thing I want to do. It is not about manipulation. It's not about money. I'm not going to be charging for initiations. There's going to be an initiation fee or whatever, but it's for time and materials. I'm not going to be making money on this. In the same way that the fraternal organizations that I've participated with in the past are run in a nonprofit way. Basically it's just time and materials. You're not getting nobody's getting rich off of this. This is a service to the to humankind that I'm doing here, because I think that humankind needs some freaking help, because we have a hard time with life and stuff, and we've had a hard time with life our whole time, and we've always used magic to try to help with that, because magic helps. Life is hard and magic helps. That's my motto with the whole process that Rufus Opus is up to and all this stuff. So anyway, Derveni Manuscript goes over the whole process of how Zeus became the demiurge that created the universe, that recreated the universe in his own image by swallowing the symbol that represented the source of all of creation on the planet, all of existence, all of everything that we experience, and all of the expression of that which is had to come into being through this creative and generative force. It is symbolized by a giant phallus. It is represented by the phallus of Sky, Uranus, who was the first generative principle. In the Orphic tradition that I follow, personally, for my personal interpretation of all this stuff, Gaia emanated Uranus after Eros came into being. So, first if you read the Hesiod, out of chaos came Nyx, or came darkness. First came darkness, and then came Nyx. And then out of Nyx, or out of chaos again, came Gaia. And Eros came into being, and when Eros came into being, Gaia was overcome with desire to experience creation. And in the moment of desire of creation, she emanated Uranus, the sky, the generative principle of creation. And in that moment, they consummated her lust for existence and created the universe. Now, that didn't work out so well for Uranus. He didn't want to have the babies, so she had Kronos cut off his dick. This cutting off of the dick is where the transfer of power went to Kronos. Kronos didn't pick up the dick, okay? The dick just went up into the sky, it grew wings and flew away. You can read about it in the Hesiod, you can read about it in a couple of places. It just grew wings and flew up into the sky. It turns into the sun. If you follow through different mythologies, you can find out that eventually you track it down, and the sun itself is the severed phallus of a god. And what god do we know lost his penis? We know it was Saturn, or that it was Sky, Uranus, and that Saturn was the one that chopped it off originally. And out of the foam came Aphrodite. So if you saw my advertisement for the Fascinus talisman, the whole process of creation, that creative principle expressed itself into being, and when it was lopped off, out of that came the feminine aspect of that creative principle, which is Aphrodite, and the masculine principle of that mindless creative generative force, which is just a dick. All it is just always going around being a dick. That's what the sun is. It's the source of light and life and liberty. It's not willed. It's not controlled by any will under the rulership of Kronos, the Golden Age, when the Titans were the kings. Kronos didn't incorporate that creative principle. He just let it continue to create things, but he only allowed certain things to be in reality, right? So he shoved all the monsters down into Tartarus. He forced humans to behave in a certain way. Everything, it was great. Everything was ordered, structured, and wonderful. Everything was timely. Say what you will about Kronos, but the trains ran on time. Let's see. Okay, unfortunately, there's a few skips in the audio, but for the most part, I can hear pretty well. Okay, I'm going to try to speak up a little bit. That should help. Will this be posted to watch later on YouTube? Yes, absolutely. It should be. Yes. All of my live stuff, if you go on my channel on the main page, there's a live tab that you have to open and get to, and all of my live stuff is accessible there. Oh, excuse me. Okay. So anyway, where were we? Okay. So the phallus was this thing that was just going on. It was represented this generative principle. Okay. Eventually, right? So since Kronos was subduing everything and keeping everything from being created, or keeping the things that Gaia and Rhea were creating, instead of letting those things out, he's keeping them down in hell, and this generated resentment, and they created Zeus, right? So they tricked Kronos into swallowing a stone, and we know the myth of how Zeus was raised in this isle, okay? And this is where the Zeus cult comes into being. All right, so the Zeus cult is formulated around the idea of Zeus's life. And when Zeus came into being, he was raised by his grandmother, Gaia, and Rhea to overthrow Kronos, because Kronos had, number one, he hadn't actually taken over the generative principle. So the generative principle was still just going running it wild through the sky. It ran according to the path it was supposed to, but there was no will directing it. When it was connected to Uranus was the will directing creation. But without that directive force, it was just creating things, and things were just coming into being without any plan or any fate necessarily, per se, but it had to be controlled and dominated after it came into being. All right, so to get their children out of hell, Gaia and Rhea raised, and also because Kronos was swallowing the other babies, right? He was not allowing the children of Rhea to actually come into being because he was afraid they would overthrow it. So because he was keeping this creation from coming into manifestation, they overthrew him. They plotted against him, and they raised Zeus to be this rebel, this orphan child. Like, he had no parents. His grandmother came and visited once in a while, and his mother came when she could. But for the most part, when we read about Zeus's early days, he was raised on this mountain with like this bashing of shields. These gods, the rough gods, the pagan gods, the rustic gods were out there. The can't remember what they're called off the top of my head. The cherubim, or the, not cherubim, anyway, they're out there banging on their shields to cover up his cries, but they weren't like taking care of him. Amalthea, right? She comes into play. She's the nymph, or perhaps a goat that brings him milk, or the nymph that brings him goat milk. She helps raise him, but she's a nymph. She's just a wild entity, a spirit of nature. She's not like a mother. She's not a human. She's not a god. She's not in any way, shape, or form anything like what we would consider a deity. The only deities that he interacts with are Gaia and Rhea, who are programming him to become this rebel to overthrow his father, because they tell him that his father is doing all these terrible things, right? So he's raised with they introduce him to Metis. Metis is a concept that Bernabe talks about, and it's pretty interesting, actually. And this is something that we'll talk about in the process of the cult, or whatever, as you go through the phases of the cult. Anyway, the phases of the cult are based on the different phases of his life. But basically, so Zeus had to get Metis. He had to get wisdom. So Metis is not just the goddess, his first wife that he marries according to Hesiod. It's not just that. It's also Metis represents an attitude, a cunningness, a wisdom, a knowledge of magical principles, of the occult forces that cause things to come into being, and the obtaining of Metis, the way that he swallows Metis later on when he's trying, and she eventually becomes Athena, wisdom. That Metis that he's getting, that integration of Metis into his own self, represents the accumulation of wisdom, wit, cunning, and magical acumen, right? So as the rebel orphan, it's our job in this phase of the great work, or the transition, to actually just acquiring Metis, right? To learn how to conjure spirits, to do that kind of thing. And then, so after he goes through this phase of learning and practicing, he insinuates himself into the courts of his father, right? Zeus goes on and he insinuates himself in the courts of his father. He gets to know his dad, and he becomes the cupbearer, and he starts telling all these jokes, and he creates these games for the Titans to play, and they trust him, and that's how he's able to slip in the poison, the pharmacopoeia, the sorcery that Metis teaches him is pharmacopoeia, the ability to create a pill or a poison to make all the gods fall asleep, and specifically a drug that made his father puke to throw up his brothers and sisters, right, to free the other Olympians. So like he had to use Metis, which was this cunning, this wit, and this quick-wittedness, right? He had to use all of his cunning to be able to slip into the courts and talk his way into it. He was a con man. He was like a face man, right? He had to sneak his way in and get the people of the Titanic realm to believe in him and trust him, and to think that he was somebody that they could actually let into their good graces or whatever, So sorry, I don't know if I'm fucking with my sound or not, but hopefully it's not too bad. Anyway, so he is all right. So after he's got his brothers and sisters out, he begins the Titanomachy, and this is the next phase of our cult, right? So in the first phase of the cult, you're the rebel orphan, and you're obtaining Metis, and it represents the beginning phase of a magician learning how to do the great work. Like, what is the great work? What is this whole cosmology of our great work? What are we going to be doing here? What's it all about? How does it work? How do I conjure a spirit? Why does a spirit come when I conjure it? What do I do with a conjured spirit? What's this whole great work thing about? Why do I want to transform my life? Why would I do that? How do I do that? When you're learning how to do all that stuff, that's the obtaining of Metis, right? So that's your rebel orphan phase. But then when you actually start using that to begin to empower yourself, like the Titanomachy, when you overthrow the Titans, you start to turn that power, or that understanding of the ability to conjure things, you start turning that inward and begin to overthrow your own titans, the things that it's sort of like in astrology, the phase where you begin to chain your demons and tie them up and make them obey your will, right? When you start doing that, when you start taking over the forces that are sabotaging you and holding you back, right? So this represents like when Zeus slipped his father that drug that made him throw up his brothers and sisters, that represents us overthrowing the forces in our own selves that stop us from expressing our powers of creation, our powers of creativity. So in our lives, up until we start learning magic, this is the theory anyway, like we're bumbling along and we're reactive, we're responding to things, we're not really empowered, we're not very efficient at what we do, we're not very good at creating our life. But then we learn about magic and we're drawn to it, and we start studying it, we get better at it, and then we realize that we're kind of a mess, but we would be better at magic if we started working on ourselves. So we start working on ourselves, we use the power of magic to transform ourselves, which creates a new powerful entity on the earth that can then create new experiences that help other people and help themselves, and begin to harmonize the forces of the universe and all this stuff. And it's like reclaiming all this stuff, right? So that's like the theory of the great work, right? And this process of cleansing ourselves, of purifying ourselves and turning ourselves inward, that's like this titanomachy, right? The overthrowing of the powers that stop us from manifesting our creative powers clearly and potently, that keep us from being powerful. So if you've ever been through, like, for example, a traumatic event, like suppose you were deeply in love with someone and they broke your heart, and you wanted to spend the rest of your life with them, and you thought you would, but it turns out they were cheating on you behind your back with your very best friend or whatever. And it's like, not only can you not have friends anymore, but you can't have a lover anymore because you've learned all these terrible things about people, and you have to heal, right? And you have to learn to trust again, and you have to go through that transformation process of overcoming that pain, so that before you can start to have friendships again, where you trust people, where you can start to have a romance, where you trust your romantic partner with your friends. You have to learn to do all that stuff again because you've been hurt. So in the same way, we have a million things happen to us as children and as young adults, and as we begin our careers. As we go through the process of becoming human beings, as we become adults, we frame our experiences around whether it's a positive or a negative experience. And we have traumas. Some of us have traumas, and we have to work through that stuff, and we have to learn how to purify it and cleanse it, and to be able to express the powers of Aphrodite and Venus accurately and purely in our kingdoms, in our realm, in our experienced reality. We have to work through our love issues. If we were hurt in our youth, if we were betrayed, we have to get over that so that we can do it cleanly and purely. Because as we are purified, so also is our universe purified. Okay, we're not just doing this for ourselves. We create a better world when we're better people, and when we create a better world, the world's a better place. Right? We're not just doing this for ourselves here. All right? We benefit from it immediately, but it heals the world. That's the process of the great work. It's not for me that I do all this stuff. Really. I do this all for you. It's why I do all of this. It's why I enjoy my life to the fullest, and enjoy making money and having nice things and all that stuff. I do all this stuff because I want a better world for myself, but also because when I'm happy, I'm going to make a better world for everybody I interact with. Right? And that's what I want everybody to be able to do. Anyway, so when you overcome those aspects of yourself, you become the Olympic king. When Zeus finally releases so Zeus uses Hecate's power, the key to hell, right? He goes down to hell and he releases the Cyclops, and he gets his powerful thunderbolt, right? The bolt and the lightning, right? He gets his powerful weapons from the Cyclopes who were locked up in hell, right? Hecate supports him in that. This one Titan helps him, right? Or one of the Titans that helped him, and Helios helps him, right? But anyway, she helps him, and by releasing her Titanic brothers, her ugly, monstrous children of Gaia, the monsters, the ugly things in life that we don't necessarily like in life, that we have to experience, by releasing that stuff, Hecate helped him overcome these titans, these monsters, right? So part of this process, of this transformation process of this Zeus cult, is going to be learning how to use the monsters that are part of us to overcome those things that would stop us from being the creative powers that we are. Because a lot of times those parts of ourselves that are terrifying to other people, we are told as children to repress those. They are abused, by predators. They try to steal that spark, that beauty, that love. They try to take that away from us because they want what was taken from them, maybe, or they want because it feels good, or whatever twisted crap, whatever twisted sparks they are. They try to take that from us, right? But we heal that that wound that they made on us, and we reclaim that power, because we never stopped being connected to everything else. We never stopped having that power. We never lost our authority over everything else in this world. We never lost it. We have it. We have the ability to influence everything. Maybe we don't control it all, but we influence it. We manipulate these things with these hidden occult powers. That's what we do. And we're good at it. Anyway, so he goes down. He goes down to hell. The Hecateon initiations into the infernal realms, into the underworld, understanding how the underworld fits into things. That's all part of this great work process as magicians that we should be going through. You know, if you look at the 16th century, we had all these things in our occult tradition, right? There were demons that needed to be incorporated. There were angels that had to be called on. You know, they had just if you look at Ficino's school, he had just rediscovered and translated the Corpus Hermeticum, and this influenced John Dee. It influenced Agrippa. It influenced Trithemius. You know, it influenced all these people that became the foundation of our occult philosophy, our occult tradition, right? And the great work was the process of what they were working on this whole time. You know. So Zeus, after he gets empowered and gets the power of the bolt and overthrows the Titans, he becomes the Olympic king, right? And then according to Bernabe over here, you know, after that, he goes on and visits Night because he's having a terrible dream. So here's the visit to Night. He's having these terrible dreams after he seizes the power, and then he goes down and he talks to her, and he talks to her and figures out what he has to do to assume power. And basically she tells him that where Kronos failed to absorb that creative generative power, he has to succeed. So he has to absorb that power. So he absorbs it, and when he does, the universe is destroyed. Right, so he consumes. Like if you look at some of the myths, the Orphic myths, they call it phanes. Right, it's phanes that he's consuming. It's this the fascinus, that phallus of that dead god, or the god that was castrated. It's his phallus that he can. It represents that force of generative creation. Right, so he consumes it and makes it his own. And in that moment, the universe is destroyed. He's destroyed. His ego, whatever, is gone. You know, there's no more Hecate. There's no more Zeus. There's no more Hera. There's no more anything. All the gods, everything that happened up to that moment. There's no Titanomachy. There's no chaos. There's no emergence from chaos of anything. There's none of it. None of it happened. There's no Uranus, right? He consumed it, and in that moment, all of history was gone. He became the head, right? He ingested the penis of that first procreated the ether. He ingested the source of everything, right? And when he did, he recreated the universe. And on him were gestated all the immortals, blessed gods and goddesses, right? So he recreates the universe in that instant according to his will. Now that creative force now has a will directing it. Zeus is the will of creation now. He wasn't before. It was just creative force. Now it is directed, and everything that we experience, everything that we hear about this whole story I'm telling you right now, this is just the made up history of Zeus in that moment, or whoever it was, the demiurge that created the universe in its own image, created everything that we believe is represented in this myth that we experience as reality. It created everything, all right? On him were gestated all the immortals, blessed gods and goddesses. Okay? He created that universe. He became the mind, the nous mind of the Poemander, right? He became that essence. He became, this is the divine Poemander, by the way, from the Corpus Hermeticum, right? That I was just talking about. It's yeah, anyway, sorry. Um, he became basically the equivalent of the logos, right? Not the logos, the nuos mind that is being expressed in the divine Poemander through the logos, right? As humankind, right? In this creation myth. That's basically what Zeus was becoming when he gestated all those gods and goddesses on himself. It's the same story of creation and emanation. Okay, and that's what we're talking about here. Okay, the creation and emanation of existence. So by ingesting this source of and force of existence, he became the will that created everything that we experience. All right. So that's the story that we're basing things on. All right, that's the story of our creation myth that I'm going to create this cult around. Right. So the phases of the creation myth are, let's see. So it is the rebel orphan phase where you acquire metis. It is the Titanomachy phase where you overthrow the Titans, where it's like taming your demons. You go through the initiatory process, transformation process, and the healing process. The Olympic King phase, where you're actually creating and ruling your world. You're enjoying the results of your initiations. And the Pantocrator phase, the all in all. This is after, and this is all theoretical, the last phase. This is like the phase where you adopt that generative force and recreate the universe in your own image, assuming that that's something you're called to do. I don't think that's going to be for everybody, but it's like the theoretical final endpoint of things. I am personally working on that myself because I think it's interesting, but I don't know that necessarily I'm ever going to become the all-in-all any more or less than I already am. But it's just sort of like exploring that nature of things. So I want to talk a little bit now why do we need this framework? What are we doing with it? Why do I want to do the great work based on this framework? What is the great work, right? So when you look at what the great work itself is, this whole series of conversations that I'm starting, it's designed to approach the concepts of the process of the great work through the transformational mythology of the Derveni manuscript. Okay, so but let's not lose sight of what that great work is all about. So this quote I'm showing you now is from Agrippa. It's from I believe the second book or the first book, one of his books of occult philosophy, and basically it says, "Whosoever therefore shall know themselves shall know all things in themselves. Especially they shall know God, according to whose image they were made. They shall know the world, the resemblance of which they beareth. They shall know all creatures, which with they symbolizeth, and what comfort they can have and obtain from stones, plants, animals, elements, heavens, from spirits, angels, and everything, and how all things may be fitted for all things in their time, place, order, measure, proportion, and harmony, and can draw and bring themselves bring to themselves even as a lodestone draws iron." Right? So the great work, according to Agrippa, is this process of learning to know yourself. And by learning to know yourself, learning all these things about the universe, you're actually learning about yourself. He presents all these tables of correspondences of how everything corresponds to the 7 planets and the 4 elements and whatever other numbers are important to him. Right? He presents the knowledge of the universe through the occult lens, according to how it corresponds to things. And he says, when you study all these little things, you're going to actually understand something bigger, because whosoever wants to know themselves, you're going to know all these things in yourself. You're studying all these things in the universe, but you're doing it because that which is above is like that which is here below, right? The principle of unity and reflection. Okay, and this is all the things that are represented in the Corpus Hermeticum, which again was just released around it was just rediscovered and made popular by Ficino around the 14th century, 15th century. And here in the 16th century, in the 1500s, the 1600s, Agrippa studied with Trithemius and presented this understanding of the Hermetic principles of reclaiming this this standing in the universe with the other gods and the archangels and the spirits that govern the planets, taking your role as a human being in that process of creation, that chain of manifestation, as an intelligence directing the will of God through your desires, your actions, and your choices, in righteous harmony with the will of God, right? That was their process. That's what they said the great work was learning how to remind yourself that this is who you were. And all these things because you yourself are a reflection of this macrocosm. And that's the principles of the great work. And the idea that I am basing all of this stuff on is that by studying magic, specifically the magic of conjuring spirits, we can go through the process of personal transformation that makes us more efficient and more effective at creating and expressing the world that we want to experience for ourselves and for our loved ones, right? And I believe that is the fulfillment of our true will, what they call the true will in Thelema, the great work, the magnum opus of every human being, is the creation and experience of our lives. That's my belief. That's my interpretation, right? I believe that when we're born, we die, right? Like, not that day, but on that day we get a death date. And between birth and death, we have a life. And in that life, it seems, and I'll get into more of this with more pictures and stuff, as if we get to create our experiences, or at least participate in the creation of our experiences through our choices. And then we die. What we know for sure, in my opinion, is that that's what we get. We get our experiences. Whether that's the point or not, that's what we know is true. So I believe that it is rational, especially if you think in terms of as above and so below, and God and man and people being reflections of other things. Yes, very much the great work is that process, right, of transforming yourself into this creative thing that creates experiences before you die, right? And according to the Corpus Hermeticum, we get to work with the 7 planetary spirits and the 4 elemental kings to materialize this existence. So, all right. So based on that, that's what we're going to be teaching people with what we're doing here. So if you go back to my site, if you go back to the site, the method of conjuration that I use, I teach it in the conjuration class. The method of transformation that I use or I recommend is based on the planetary methods of initiation. You go through the 7 spheres of the planets, starting with the moon and up through the sphere of Saturn, and you work through the issues that arise in each of those spheres. This is something you do on your own. This isn't something somebody does for you. Within our group, we'll be able to support one another in this kind of thing. I'm thinking something like an AA structure, where like you have a person that you report to maybe, or something on a very individual basis, very haphazard, very non-controlling, but very like just sort of like checking in on one another, the way I think that the AA was intended to be. But within the group, the goal is not to tell other people what to do. The goal is to discover how we can best tap into our own potential to experience our own existence. And I don't want to tell people that they have to use the Zeus thing. I like it. I like it for a lot of reasons. I like the phases, right? But this is just a model. It's only a model. I do believe that if this works, right? If in the way that this works, the demiurge recreated everything. So Zeus itself is not what it was named, all right, for all we know. Zeus is just a convenient term. It's a placeholder for the concepts that we're talking about. So throughout these conversations, I want to remind everybody that the point of what we're talking about is the great work. And the great work is the process of transformation of the self. And all the crap that I sell, all the classes that I sell, those $25 cheap-ass classes that cover all this stuff, it's about that transformation of the self. Because I believe you're here to build a good life for yourself. And I think the reason everything is screwed up is because we're building crappy lives for ourselves. And I think magic teaches people who are called to it how to control or influence their lives in greater ways, greater abilities, right? To create a better world, right? Everybody can look around and see what's wrong with the world. But we can only fix it when we are empowered and efficient, right? And according to Agrippa, and according to John Dee, and according to the magicians of the 17th century that I'm basing all of these words on, the cosmology, the ideas on, we have the ability to transform ourselves through occult practices. And we're going to call that the great work, and I'm going to show you a way to do it using those phases of Zeus's life. The rebel orphan, the titanomachy, the fighting against those titanic forces that would keep you from manifesting and materializing yourself. That self-transformation phase, the titanomachy. The Olympic king, after you've purified yourself and cleansed yourself, what life are you going to build for yourself? What are you going to rule your existence with? You know, who are your Hercules going to be? You know, what children are you going to spawn? What creations are you going to create? You know, and then the Pantocrator. What are we going to do then? What are we going to do with all that? You know, so again, in the rebel orphan phase, you'll take the conjuration class. You'll learn a little bit about gods, a little bit about what your cosmology is, and basically cover that. In the titanomachy phase, you'll take the seven spheres and the holy guardian angel class. You'll get yourself equipped to accomplish the great work and purify yourself. You'll get yourself purified, and once you're purified, you'll begin the Olympic king phase, where you create the world as you see fit. Within the context of other people's rules. Eventually, though, if you ever get the hankering for it, you'll enter the Pantocrator phase, where you'll reach the all-in-all and actually begin perceiving or seeking to perceive the universe in different ways. So I don't know if that's real or if it's all pipe dreams, but it's a lot of fun to think about for me anyway, and happy to share that with other people. All right, I'm going to wrap things up there. I have a whole bunch more stuff that I thought I was going to cover tonight about the nature of the universe, the monkey mind, how the lightning works, stuff about the fates. I want to talk about the Arines. You know, I have a lot of things I wanted to talk about tonight that I'm not going to talk about because it's already late. So next time we will pick up wherever I'm at in the outline, and we will cover more of these ideas, and we will end up wherever we end up. Hopefully we'll have a good time with it. So thank you all for everything. I hope you had a good time. I had a good time talking to you. Let's see. Qigong Tea Time. Am I live on Facebook? I think I am. It says I'm streaming on Facebook. Hopefully. Anyway, that is all I have for tonight. Talk to you soon.